32 Haunted Tales. Discover 7 sinister secrets revealed in this spine-chilling horror collection. Jessica peered into the early evening shadows, her heartbeat thumping like a hammer against the stillness of the night. The words of eager ghosts seemed to whisper through the air, the very walls of her home wrapping tighter around her, a straitjacket of despair and fear. The laughter of her son Ethan once filled each room, but now there was only a haunting silence, a reminder of the family she had lost. It felt like cancer, eating away at the corners of hope she tried desperately to cling to. "Mom!" Ethan's voice pierced through her thoughts. It was a frantic call from his little voice, trembling with a trepidation that twisted her insides. "There are whispers and shadows outside the house." The panic in his tone sent a shiver down her spine, a jolt of adrenaline that made her feet move before she could process the words. Rushing through the tree-lined streets, she felt the warmth of safety slip away. The streetlights flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced ominously, warning her of something evil lurking. As she neared home, she spotted a group of children huddled together, wide-eyed with terror, pointing towards her house as if it were the epicenter of some malevolent force. "It's true, there's a ghost," one of them whispered, their eyes darting back to the darkened windows of her living room. Shaking her head, Jessica tried brushing it off, but a deep, chilling unease settled in her stomach. She shoved the door open, but instead of a familiar creak, it felt like an invitation to the very unknown she feared. The creaks and groans now mingled with distant echoes, as if she had stepped into another realm where dread was a palpable presence. When she reported her son's fears to the police, their dismissive chuckles stung her like ice. Nothing to worry about in this quiet suburb. But their comfort felt as hollow as her heart. Desperation drove her to dig deeper into the unsettling history surrounding her neighborhood. With every legend she uncovered, the sensation of being watched enveloped her like a suffocating fog. A blood-curdling tale emerged, stories of people vanishing, as if the very soil held secrets that demanded sacrifices. Those restless spirits, the ghosts of the past, seemed to swirl around, beckoning with an eerie whisper. It was during one of those moonless nights that Ethan vanished while playing outside. Panic flooded through her, drowning any semblance of rationality. The house's weight crushed her spirit. She fought against the dark shadows that crawled around the corners. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a figure loomed just beyond her front window. Streaks of darkness twisted, its obscured silhouette recalling all those terrible legends. Breathless, she felt the reality crystallize inside her. The monster she feared might not have been a fabrication of her imagination. Before she continued, "I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With every passing second, the sense of dread tightened around her throat. She hovered at the edge of the living room, fighting against the need to flee, feeling the shadows press in. Time itself seemed to slow, the clock barely whispering as if it knew the truth. Ethan was gone, and the darkness danced ever closer, waiting, watching. What would she find when she ventured into the night? Would she face the horror that had already invaded her home, or would she uncover a truth more terrifying than the folklore she had unearthed? The figure stood motionless, shrouded in the darkness, mere inches from the window. Jessica could barely breathe, her mouth dry with fear. It felt as if the very air conspired against her, thickening with a sense of impending doom. A cold sweat dripped down her back. She had to know who or what was out there. Gathering what little courage she had left, she crept closer to the window, each step a battle against her paralyzing dread. As she peered outside, the figure shifted, becoming a silhouette against the warped glow of the streetlight. It was a child, impossibly thin, with hair hanging in greasy strands that framed a face that bore no expression. Jessica's heart raced. Was this a sick joke? Her instincts screamed to bolt away, but her feet adhered to the floor, unwilling to move. "Mom!" Ethan's voice echoed again in her mind, reverberating like a haunting refrain. Desperation clawed at her throat. If that was really a child, if it was Ethan, Jessica had to act. She ripped the door open, the sudden flood of cold air stinging her skin like icy knives. Stepping outside, the weight of the night pressed down on her. The children's whispers from earlier haunted her thoughts. Fear wrapped itself around her like a fog swallowing a ship in treacherous waters. The small figure took a wary step back, hesitant, unsure. Jessica couldn't tell what it was thinking, but the feeling emanating from it was chilling. "Ethan," she ventured, her voice quaking. The figure halted, tilting its head as if parsing the sound of her question. For a split second, hope illuminated her heart, breaking through the overwhelming fear. Then, without warning, the figure darted into the darkness, heading toward the woods that bordered her property. Adrenaline replaced her momentary hope as she bolted after it, ignoring the prickling sensation across her skin. The trees loomed ahead, twisted in black against the moonless sky. Roots snaked dangerously across the ground, but Jessica pressed on, her heart pounding like a war drum. "Stop!" she cried, panic increasing with every step. Yet the figure only moved quicker, a dark wisp weaving through the underbrush. Wrapping her arms around her burgeoning anxiety, she lunged, stumbling once as a root caught her foot, sending her sprawling into the damp earth. A voice echoed among the trees, a voice that sounded so very much like Ethan's, soft and fearful, but deeper, more distorted. "Help me," it called, sending chills racing up her spine. "Mom, help me!" Jessica scrambled to her feet, ignoring the bruising pain in her knees. Every ounce of rationality screamed to turn back, that she was pursuing a shadow that had nothing to do with her son. But her heart overruled her mind, propelling her forward. As she bored deeper into the woods, strange sensations clawed at her, whispers wrapping around her like tendrils. The thick brush seemed alive, twigs snapping under her feet in protest. Suddenly, she felt that eyes were on her. Not just the eyes of the figure, something unseen loomed, watching her every move with sinister intent. "Come play," the voice purred, now echoing from multiple directions. It surrounded her, gripping her with terror. A moment later, the ground shook beneath her, and shadows danced menacingly, swirling around. Panic surged through her veins. "Ethan!" She screamed into the suffocating darkness, but the woods swallowed her cries. Just then, the world fell silent, as if holding its breath. The whispering stopped, the shadows froze, and in that terrifying stillness, she knew something unimaginable was waiting just out of sight. What was her son caught up in? What malicious force greeted her in the dark? Jessica's heart raced not just from fear but from the bleak anticipation of the unknown. In the silence, a dreadful awareness blossomed, and she felt that she was alone in the woods. As a figure emerged slowly from the darkness behind her, she realized she was never supposed to find Ethan. The woods had other plans, and the night was just beginning to unfurl its deadly secrets. What other horrors lay buried within? The roots of her own backyard? Jessica's breath hitched in her throat as the figure stepped closer. Moonlight flickered through the gnarled branches above, illuminating just enough to reveal a face not far from her own. It was a woman, but the eyes were sunken, hollowed out and dark. A grin stretched across her face, wide and jagged, revealing teeth that appeared far too sharp. Jessica's heart slammed against her ribcage, her limbs turning heavy as dread settled over her like a funeral shroud. Who are you?" Jessica stammered, fear tightening her voice to a whisper. The woman didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, emanating an aura of icy malice that made Jessica recoil. The whispers returned, louder now, a chaotic harmony that surrounded her, singing in discordant tones, drawing her mind into a swirl of confusion. Find him," they urged, yet Jessica realized they didn't mean Ethan. A wave of nausea rolled through her. "No, not him. Let him go." Shoo, the woman cooed, her voice dripping with mockery. "He is safe with us. You shouldn't have followed. This is not your place." Jessica's feet were paralyzed, roots of a different kind ensnaring her legs. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but those hollow eyes held her captive, refusing to let her break the spell of their gaze. "Why? What do you want?" "Nothing more than what you have," the woman hissed, a cruel curl of her lips highlighting her skeletal smile. "You think you can find what has been snatched from you? The boy is a key. All you must do is give in." Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, willing the terror to fade, desperate for clarity. She needed to think, to feel her son in her arms rather than losing him to the darkness. "Ethan!" She screamed once more, this time feeling the weight of her own voice push against the suffocating gloom. But the whispers warped her name, twisting it into something monstrous and far away. Suddenly, the ground trembled again. But this time, it was different, more frantic, alive with undulating energy. Jessica bit her lower lip until it bled, trying not to scream as shapes began to rise from the earth, dark forms coiling up like smoke reaching toward the surface. They flickered on the edge of her vision, teasing her with glimpses of what they could be: twisted arms, contorted faces, lost souls writhing for freedom. And then came the sound that made her stomach drop, a childless laughter, haunting and echoing off the trees. It resonated with an otherworldly glee, scraping against her sanity. It felt wrong, so wrong. It was Ethan's laughter, but layered with sorrow and something more sinister. "Come, play with us," the shadows whispered in chorus, reaching for her with gnarled fingers, growing hungry in the night. "No!" Jessica shouted, summoning all her strength. She struggled against the roots binding her to the ground. "You can't have him." The woman stepped aside, revealing a path deeper into the woods. "Then you'll have to fight us, one to you? But it won't be just for him, it will be for your very soul." Jessica's heart surged with both anger and fear. She could feel the weight of her choice pressing down upon her: save Ethan or save herself. With a sudden burst of defiance, she ripped her foot free from the ground and bolted down the path the woman had shown her. The shadows pursued her, frantic and swirling, while the twisted laughter echoed around her like an unholy choir. Trees loomed overhead, bending and twisting in unnatural fashion as if the woods were alive, conspiring to thwart her escape. "Find him!" the shadows screamed, their cries piercing the night. "He is waiting for you." What choice did she have now? Jessica ran deeper into the darkness, uncertain of where it would all lead, knowing she might never come back. Little did she know, the woods had no intention of letting her leave with her son. As she stumbled through the underbrush, the ground shifted again beneath her as an unseen force pulled. Something waited in the gloom, ready to lay bare its true intentions. What was it holding back? What else lurked in the dark, eager to corral her spirit and keep Ethan forever? Branches clawed at Jessica as she stumbled forward, each thud of her heart blending with the darkness closing in around her. The laughter echoed like a cruel taunt, swirling between the trees, amplifying her fear. Every instinct screamed for her to stop, to catch her breath, but the thought of Ethan pushed her on. She veered left, the shadows narrowing in around her like hungry wolves. There was no time to think. The whispers were everywhere now, brushing against her ears like icy fingers. Find him, they hissed, their urgency rising as if they could sense her desperation. "Get away from me!" she yelled, her voice a harsh whisper against the thick air. It felt futile, like throwing pebbles at a tidal wave. For every step she took, the darkness pressed in closer, the underbrush snapping and crackling as unseen eyes watched. It was a sickening sensation, the prickling crawl of being hunted. Ahead, the moonlight broke through. It revealed a small clearing, eerie and still. Jessica hesitated, her breath fogging in the cool night air as she entered. It was too quiet. There were no whispers here, only an oppressive silence, wrapping around her like a shroud. She scanned the area, looking for any sign of Ethan. "Ethan," she called, her voice breaking. Nothing. The clearing was empty, just the shadows swirling at its edge. But then, a flicker. Movement in the corner of her eye drew her attention. In the center of the clearing stood a decaying tree, its bark peeling away like ancient scars. Hanging from one of its lower branches was a tattered jacket, a child's jacket. It was Ethan's. The sight snatched the breath from her lungs. She stumbled forward, reaching out to touch it, but the moment her fingers brushed against the fabric, the ground shook violently, and the whispers erupted around her anew, shrieking as if the very earth was upset. "Leave! You are not welcome," they cried, their tones rising in a chaotic symphony. The laughter resumed, joyful yet dark, echoing her son's name from the woods. "Ethan!" She shook the jacket, panicked and desperate. "Where are you? Please, answer me." The whispers distorted her words, turning them into a mocking echo that sent her heart racing. "Come to us, come play." Jessica pulled back, realizing too late the danger that surrounded her. Shadows twisted around the base of the tree, creeping toward her like sinister vines. Feral shapes began to emerge, their forms shifting and changing, lips curling into wicked grins. Then, through the thrumming darkness, a tiny hand reached from the shadows, small, pale, and trembling. Jessica's heart surged with love and terror. "Ethan!" she cried, torn between hope and horror. "You shouldn't have come," a small, distorted voice called from the darkness, raspy and hollow. "You'll have to make a choice." Jessica stepped forward, instinctively wanting to reach for that hand, but fear held her back. The shadows circled closer, the laughter becoming hysterical. The tree's branches twisted grotesquely, as though yearning to ensnare her. "Choose," they clamored. "Him or your soul." The choice hung in the air like an anvil, weighing her down. Heart pounding, she looked around frantically for an escape, but the darkness was tightening its grip. "Let him go!" she screamed, trembling with every ounce of her being. But the laughter grew louder, the shadows gathering momentum, hungry for a decision. What new horror awaited her? Would the choice she made condemn her forever? Or could she still save Ethan from this nightmare? The shadows writhed, forming grotesque figures around her, their laughter resonating like cold steel scraping against bone. "Choose!" they cackled, their voices intertwining like the twisting branches above. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest, every beat a desperate plea for clarity. Ethan's tiny hand still reached out from the darkness, trembling and vulnerable. She thought she saw his face flash behind the veil of shadows, wide eyes filled with fear, desperation echoing in his silent scream. "Mom!" She imagined him calling, the word barely a whisper. But those shadows twisted it into a discordant chant, mocking and cruel. "Choose his life or your soul." Terror clawed at her throat, suffocating her. The jacket dangled like a bait, an anchor in this sea of madness. I want tea," she screamed, backing away, her feet sinking into the damp earth, feeling the pull as though the ground itself was trying to swallow her whole. "Then stay." They rejoiced, and with a snap, the shadows surged forward, their forms blurring, becoming one with the darkness. Jessica's mind raced. Memories of Ethan flooded her thoughts, the sound of his laughter, the gleam of his little smile. A sudden instinct surged within her, a need to save him, to protect him against these ancient horrors. "I'll choose him," she shouted, her voice tearing through the darkness like a beam of light. "I choose Ethan." But the laughter stopped abruptly. Silence fell so thick it felt suffocating. Jessica held her breath, waiting. The shadows parted just enough for her to see the outline of Ethan, trapped, his expression now twisted in fear, as if the very decision she made had distorted everything around him. "You have chosen." The whispers hissed, interweaving through the air with a chilling cadence. "But every choice brings a cost." The shadows lunged. Jessica felt a searing pain in her chest, like ice spearing through her heart. She collapsed to her knees, gasping, the ground cool against her skin. "No!" she cried, fear coiling around her like an iron shackle. "What have I done?" Ethan's tiny figure began to flicker, fading in and out like a dying flame. "Mom!" he pleaded, his voice a haunting echo in the darkness. "Help me. Please." Jessica clawed at the earth, desperately reaching for him. "I'm coming, Ethan. I'm coming." But the shadows tightened their grip, dragging her back as she lunged forward, fighting against the inevitable. Then, with a sudden rush, a horrific roar of wind swept through the clearing, as though the very forest was enraged. The decaying tree screamed, its bark splintering, roots thrashing like serpents above the ground. She shielded her face, the echoes of voices swirling around her, rising into a cacophony of fury. "You've awoken us, now you must pay." As a wave of darkness surged toward her, Jessica felt everything slip away, the clearing, the laughter, even that flickering image of Ethan, and she screamed, a sound lost in the abyss that awaited. Then, just as quickly, everything went silent. Jessica opened her eyes to a void so profound that it swallowed her screams. She floated in the darkness, suspended between worlds. Where was he? Had she failed? The memories of Ethan flickered, his face growing fainter, until all that remained was a whisper. Mom, with a burst of determination, she focused on that whisper. "I'm here," she breathed into the void, but her strength was waning. Save me. The echo lingered, filling her heart with fresh dread. What would happen next? Would the shadows claim not just her soul, but her innocent son? The darkness pulsed around her, and a single thought cut through the fear: there had to be a way to fight back, but where would it lead them both? The void trembled, a heartbeat echoing in the silence. Jessica felt the pressure around her, like a vice closing in. The darkness was not just a void, it was alive. It pulsed and breathed, wrapping around her like a shroud intent on smothering whatever flicker of hope remained. Ethan, she whispered, her voice caught in her throat. The cold air stung her lungs as she fought to breathe. I will find you. But how? The shadows had taken him. She clutched at the memories, the warmth of his laughter, the softness of his tiny hands. Think, Jessica. She muttered, desperation clawing at her thoughts. A figure began to materialize from the darkness, its form shifting like smoke. Was it a shadow? A trick of her mind? No, this felt too real. Fear clenched her heart. Who are you? She demanded, voice trembling. Someone who knows what you've chosen. The voice was guttural, reminiscent of grinding stone. It seeped into her, cold and sharp. You've awakened that which sleeps. You think you can take it back? I have to save him. She cried, a surge of fury igniting her. You don't understand. He is just a child. Silence fell again, heavy and oppressive. The figure moved closer. Jessica could see its twisted features more clearly now: hollow eyes, a mouth stretched too wide, jagged teeth glistening in the dim light. The shadows danced around it, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. Every choice has a price. You wanted him back, but can you bear the burden? What do you mean? Jessica's heart raced, each word pulling her deeper into dread. What are you asking of me? Your soul for his. No. She shook her head violently, cold sweat dripping down her back. I won't give him up. He is my son. A low roar of laughter filled the air. It was dark, mocking, as if the shadows themselves were relishing in her torment. You think you can fight what you've invited into your life? You've already chosen. The cost is set. Jessica's mind reeled. She could feel the weight of that decision pressing down on her like a rotting tree. This wasn't a fair fight. She had awakened something ancient and vile. Your spirit will fuel the hunger, the creature hissed, inching closer. He will flicker and fade until even your memories do not remain, unless you make another choice. Panic surged. What choice? Sacrifice another who? I won't sacrifice anyone. Then surrender to the shadows completely. The boy will fade, and your agony will follow. Jessica was paralyzed. The thought of losing Ethan, of him slipping away like grains of sand through her fingers, was unbearable. But to choose another? To condemn someone else to this fate? Mom, help me! That fragile whisper threaded through her psyche, snapping the paralysis. She could not let this be the end, could not lose him to a fate worse than death. There had to be another way. Tell me. What do I have to do? The creature smiled grotesquely, a grin stretching wider. You must embrace the shadows. Accept their darkness. Only then can you grasp true power. No, the words slipped from her lips, weak and afraid. But deep down, a seed of defiance began to grow. What will you choose? The creature asked, its voice dripping with anticipation. Jessica closed her eyes briefly, envisioning Ethan's face, his smile echoing in the depths of her heart. I will never stop fighting for him. The darkness around her pulsed violently as her decision crystallized. A wind howled, sending waves of shadows crashing around her. She felt a surge of power reverberate through her veins like a storm. But at what cost? As the shadows began to swirl violently, Jessica braced for what was to come. The being's laughter grew, booming in the chaos. Would this be the moment they would face down together, or a point of no return? And in that dreadful moment, a thought struck her heart: could she truly embrace the abyss to save her son from its clutches? Fight back! She screamed into the chaos, unsure if she was rallying herself or Ethan. The winds howled louder as shadows thickened around them, and she felt the ground shift beneath her. Would this darkness consume them, or would they forge a path back to the light? The answer lay hidden in the swirling void around her, waiting for her next move. In that moment, a blinding flash ignited within her. Something powerful was awakening, but would it bring salvation or doom? Would the shadows let go, or would they consume them both? The shadows erupted around Jessica, a whirlpool of dark energy, as the laughter of the creature filled her ears. She could barely stand against the merciless winds that howled like a banshee, tearing at her thoughts and dragging her deeper into the abyss. Everything felt slippery: her resolve, her memories, and the very essence of who she was. Yet, within the chaos, that blinding flash remained a flicker of something primal and potent. She felt it thrumming in her veins, thrumming in time with her pulse. This was her chance. She had made her choice. But what did that mean? "Ethan!" she called out, desperate, her voice breaking amid the storm. Nothing. Just silence, an echo swallowed by the darkness. Panic clawed at her throat. What if he was truly gone, lost forever to this nightmare? The shadows beckoned, wrapping around her in a dark embrace, trying to pull her into submission. "No!" she screamed defiantly. "I will not give in." With each word, a surge of power coursed through her. The shadows recoiled momentarily as if struck. She clenched her fists, feeling the energy swirl, crackle, and pulse. She could harness it, not just the darkness, but the light within. It was time to face this entity head-on. "What are you?" she demanded, her voice steady now, unwavering. The creature's grin widened, its hollow eyes glowing eerily. "I am hunger. I am despair. I am what you made of your choice." A rush of terror threatened to drown her, yet Jessica remembered Ethan's voice. She felt his small hands in hers once more, the warmth of his laughter filling the chill around her. Drawing from that memory, she took a step forward, planting herself firmly against the whirlwind. "I will not be your pawn," she yelled, and the very ground beneath her trembled. The entity laughed, a low rumble that sent chills cascading down her spine. "You think you can oppose me? You are weaker than you realize." "Maybe," she replied, her heart racing. "But the love for my son is stronger than any darkness." A wave of light burst from within her, radiant, blinding, and fierce. It pushed against the shadows, illuminating the twisted form of the creature, momentarily revealing the horrors hidden beneath. The air crackled with energy. Jessica felt the shift, the light fighting back against the darkness. "Such a lovely glow," the creature snarled, anger lacing its voice. "But it won't last. Your light will fade, and when it does, you will be mine. I won't let that happen," she shouted. With every ounce of strength, she focused her will, channeling the love for Ethan, the fierce bond that would give her power even in the darkest abyss. The shadows reared back as if hurt, but the creature charged forward, claws outstretched. Jessica braced herself, heart hammering in her chest, mind racing. She had to decide. Would she fight through the darkness or let it consume her? Just as it lunged, a scream pierced the void. "Mom! Help me!" Ethan's voice. The desperation in it sent a fresh wave of horror crashing over her. "Ethan!" she cried, arms stretched out, yearning for him. In that moment of vulnerability, the shadows pressed in around her, tightening like a noose. She felt the chill of despair wrap around her limbs, dragging her down. "Let him go!" she howled, feeling the power within her flare once more, momentarily illuminating the choking darkness, but the price of her defiance remained, a looming question hanging in the air. How far was she willing to descend into darkness to save her son? Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, echoing around her as the shadows surged closer. "You think you can conquer what you fear? You are only beginning to comprehend what lies ahead." Jessica's heart raced. The shadows coiled tighter, their twisted forms looming larger. Would the abyss truly consume them both? "Ethan!" she shouted, longing in her voice. But the shadows were relentless. She could feel their cold grip tightening. In that moment, she realized she would either lose herself completely or fight with everything she had. The dark creature's whisper hissed around her. "Your son's fate lies in your hands, and You're running out of time. The air shifted, thick with tension, and she knew she had to act quickly. But would she sacrifice herself for the hope of saving Ethan, or risk everything to draw them back to the light? The darkness was closing in, and she had to make a choice, before it was too late. The shadows pulsed violently, constricting around Jessica like a serpent tightening its grip on prey. The truth settled heavily in her chest. Time was not her ally. Ethan needed her now more than ever, and she would drag herself through hell if it meant saving him. "Mom!" His voice echoed, piercing through the cacophony. Each syllable was wrapped in fear, and it tore at her heart like claws. The entity cackled, taunting her. "Do you hear him? He calls for help, yet just look at you, so weak, so fragile. You have nothing left to give." But its laughter was merely a distraction. With every ounce of determination, Jessica focused on the flicker of light inside her, a small but intense flame that illuminated the corners of her mind clouded by despair. Gritting her teeth, she reached deep within, feeling the warmth radiate from her heart. "You're wrong!" she shouted, forcing the words through sheer will. "I will not allow you to take him." Channeling the light, she felt her body tremble as energy surged through her. The shadows hesitated, snarling as Jessica unleashed a beam of radiance, cutting through their icy grasp. She could see the creature recoil, its form shifting in the brilliance, sharp angles and jagged lines revealing its monstrous nature. "Do you think light can destroy me?" The creature's voice dripped with malice, but doubt flickered across its glinting eyes. "No," she retorted, "but it can guide me to Ethan." With that, she aimed her light into the dark mist, the swirling shadows parting like a curtain. She could see a figure in the distance, one that resembled her son. "Ethan!" Her voice melded with the brilliant flare, pushing through the consuming darkness, but the shadows roared, furious. "You will pay for this!" The air grew electric, a static charge filling the space around them. Jessica felt the shift, an oncoming storm of darkness threatening to swallow her up. She had to move. "I'm coming!" she screamed, but the shadows lashed out, swatting her light like a worthless insect. The cry of her son grew fainter, distorted. "Mom! Help me! I'm scared! No!" Desperation clawed at her throat as she stumbled forward, the ground swirling below her. She pressed on, surrendering to the pull of her love for Ethan. Suddenly, a flash of memory ignited within her, a moment from years ago. Ethan, giggling in the park, sunlight crashing down on both of them. "You can fight anything, Mom," he had said, confidence bursting from his small frame. Jessica clutched that memory tight, her heart pounding as shadows pressed in on all sides. She felt the warmth of love take root, and the flame inside her ignited fully. "No darkness can extinguish this light." The shadows screeched as she launched herself forward, radiant light sweeping through the abyss like a tidal wave. But as the darkness pulled back, she felt an anguished shriek against her deeper fears. "Your light will not last forever, Jessica. You feed me with your emotions, and soon, they will turn to darkness." With each step, she drew closer to her son, the light growing brighter, but the shadows loomed over her, a smothering blanket designed to smother everything she loved. "Ethan!" She extended her hand toward the figure, desperately grasping for any sign of him. Yet just as she thought she was nearing him, the shadows surged, twisting and coiling around her, dragging her back into the depth of their suffocating embrace. "I will take what you cherish most. Look at the chaos you've summoned." Breathless, she fought against the despair gnawing at her resolve, feeling her strength begin to wane. Would she truly surrender her soul to this darkness? In that instant, a single thought drew her back: love. It was the anchor keeping her afloat, even in the swirling depths of terror. "I will not let go." But as the shadows pressed harder, doubts crept into her mind. Was it even possible to save her son, or would she lose herself first? Just then, a flicker of shadow twisted behind her, a tiny, familiar voice echoing through the darkness. "Mom, help me find the light." The ultimate question loomed. Would she risk everything to break through the darkness, or let it consume them both? The creature's laughter erupted like thunder, shaking the very core of her being. "Time is almost up, Jessica. Make your choice." As the shadows began to pull her deeper, the air thickening with despair, the finality whispered to her, leaving her teetering between hope and imminent sacrifice, desperation and darkness. The shadows constricted tighter around Jessica, their icy tendrils threatening to suffocate her efforts. In the midst of this chaos, her heart raced. Every pulse echoed her desperation, each thrum a countdown. She had to push through, she could not allow the darkness to overwhelm her. "Ethan!" She cried out again, her voice fraying, mingling with the shimmering light. She took a step forward, feeling the warmth flicker against the encroaching cold, but she was losing ground. "I will find you." The air thickened, the shadows buzzing with anticipation. They seemed to weave around her like a noose, tightening with each breath. "I will take what is dear to you," the thing growled, its voice sliding like ice through her veins. Jessica clenched her fists. "You'll take nothing." The words erupted from her, filled with a fierce resolve. The light inside her surged, illuminating her path even as despair threatened to cloud it, but even as she surged forward, she felt the creeping doubt. What if this was all in vain? What if the shadows were more powerful than her love, more cunning than her courage? The creature laughed a low, guttural sound that sent chills down her spine. "You believe the lies you tell yourself, don't you? Your hope is a flicker. I will snuff it out." The ground quaked beneath her feet as the darkness writhed, forming a pit where she stood, a ravenous maw waiting to swallow her whole. Jessica's breath caught in her throat, panic bubbling up. She could feel it tugging at her soul, whispering her greatest fears: "You will never reach him." Her memories of Ethan flared bright, each one a beacon in her mind. Her son's laughter, his messy hair blowing in the wind, that time he saved a puppy, those moments of pure joy, innocence. Small moments, but mighty in love, she whispered, drawing strength from them. "Mom! Please!" Ethan's voice returned, more desperate now, crackling through the shadows like lightning tearing the sky. "I'm lost and scared." Jessica took a deep breath, grounding herself. "I'm coming, baby. Just hold on." With renewed ferocity, she lunged forward, the light blazing vividly. The darkness screamed in fury, twisting and hissing as it fought against her advance. She heard the sounds of creation bones cracking, whispers of ancient fears swirling in a storm around her. Still, she pressed on. Suddenly, she spotted him. A blur, but undeniably Ethan, trembling and small, swallowed by a shroud of shadows. "Mom!" He extended his hand, and for that moment, Jessica saw in his eyes not just fear, but a glimmer of hope. The clash of shadows pulsed around him, but her light pressed outward, forcing the darkness back, creating a narrow pathway to her son. "I won't let you take him," she yelled, and the shadows recoiled as if burned, giving her just enough space. She pushed with all her power, feeling her light strengthen. But as she reached out toward Ethan, tendrils of darkness whipped around her. "This is your end," they hissed, cold and visceral, fading between her fingers as she grasped for her son. A sudden surge of pain shot through her, the shadows feeding off her fear, her heart-thumping dread. "Mom!" Ethan cried, the cracks in the shadows revealing the horror he was enduring. "Ethan, don't let go." The darkness clawed deeper, and as Jessica shook under the relentless force, she felt the light within her flicker dangerously. Momentarily, she glanced back at the depths, realizing they were not just shadows, they were reflections of her own fears, grief, and failures. Could it be that the battles she fought outside mirrored those within? Jessica's resolve strengthened. "I will vanquish you," she screamed, gathering the heat of every joyous memory. The light flared to life, illuminating the choking darkness in brilliance. In one last desperate lunge, she leapt towards Ethan, every fragment of her soul aiming to bridge the gap. But just as she seemed to grasp his hand, a deafening crash reverberated throughout the abyss. The shadows congealed, a violent vortex surrounding them both, pulling them in opposite directions. "No!" she shouted, but the grip of despair was relentless, choking her voice away. As her mind raced, a final thought pierced through the chaos. What if this was only the beginning? In that moment, a blinding flash illuminated the void, revealing a secret that had long lain hidden in the darkness between them. What if Ethan wasn't just an innocent child trapped in the night, but something more sinister? The shadows laughed horribly, echoing in the chasm. knowing they had the upper hand, and as the light flickered one final time, chaos ensued, leaving Jessica suspended between the horrific truth of what might lie ahead and the desperate need to save her son. What were they truly up against? And could love be powerful enough to pierce through the veil of darkness that threatened to consume them both completely? Light and darkness collided, a fierce storm swirling within the void. Jessica felt the oppressive weight of despair bearing down on her, but within, something ignited a flame fueled by relentless love. Ethan! She screamed again, her voice a battle cry with each heartbeat. Memories surged forward: Ethan's laughter, the sparkle in his eyes, all the moments that defined their bond. I want to let this end. She howled, reaching for that flicker of pure love, illuminating the darkness. The shadows recoiled, snarling, but they wouldn't yield easily. Jessica pushed through the tug of despair threatening to pull her apart. She felt every tendril of darkness wrapped around her, whispering her fears, urging her to let go, to succumb. You are weak, they hissed, their voices coiling like snakes against her skin. No. I am his mother. The declaration burst free, a potent strike against the invisible chains constricting her. With renewed ferocity, she stretched out her hand toward the dimmed figure of her son, felt the warmth of his little fingers reaching back, trembling and scared. Mom! I'm scared, help me! Ethan whimpered, and her heart shattered at the sound. Hold on! She yelled, the pulse of her love amplifying in strength. The space around her quaked. Shadowy fingers tried to drag her back, but she was relentless, fueled by every ounce of maternal instinct she possessed. This is our moment. As she lunged forward, a brilliant beam of light burst from her, pure and fierce like sunlight breaking through a storm. The shadows screamed, their dark forms writhing against the brilliance, trying to shield themselves from the onslaught. The darkness began to thin out, revealing the contours of the clearing where Ethan stood, caught between worlds, eyes wide with fear and longing. Mom! He called, and in that moment, she knew their connection could shatter the darkness surrounding them. Stumbling into the clearing, she felt power surge from within, illuminating the path before her. Drawing on every precious memory, she pushed back against the shadows, a primal force sweeping through her, thrumming with fierce energy. You won't take my son! The shadows recoiled, writhing as if struck. Jessica reached Ethan with desperate hands, finally grasping him tightly. It was as if they were tethered by love, an unbreakable bond that anchored them in the fierce storm of shadows. You're safe now, she breathed, relief coursing through her, leaving room for a flicker of hope, but the dark creature would not relent so easily. With a roar that shook the earth, it surged forward, intent on reclaiming its prize. You have awakened me, foolish woman! It bellowed, voice chilling, body twisting and warping with rage and envy. You think you can defy the darkness? Yes. Jessica shot back, determination swelling in her chest. The light between her and Ethan blazed brighter, illuminating both their forms. This darkness cannot fight love. The creature charged at them, but as it drew near, Jessica and Ethan stepped forward, together, allowing their shared light to swell, encircling them both until it radiated outward, a dazzling burst that illuminated even the deepest shadows. All at once, the edges of the darkness began to fray, unraveling like old fabric. The creature screeched, horror shaping its expression as it realized the power that had been unleashed. Love cannot be conquered. Jessica shouted, gathering the strength from within her, feeling the warmth of her son's tiny hand in hers. Ethan, together. In synchrony, they raised their free hands, pointing directly at the heart of the creature. The light expanded, and in the instant it enveloped the dark entity. It shrieked a cry laced with desperation and fury before dissolving into wisps of smoke, dissipating into nothingness. The oppressive pressure in the air lifted like a morning fog, leaving them in a serene silence, the world bursting with light. Breathless, Jessica knelt, holding Ethan tightly. Their eyes met, and in that moment, she saw his fear dissipate, replaced by the safety and warmth only a mother could give. We did it! He whispered, awe filling his voice. Jessica sighed, both relief and exhaustion washing over her. Yes, my love, we did it. She pulled him close, grateful tears brimming in her eyes. We faced the darkness together. As they sank to the forest floor, surrounded by glimmers of light, life slowly returned to the clearing. The air felt lighter, almost reverent, as if the forest acknowledged the struggle they had endured. The shadows were gone, and with them, the despair that loomed over their journey together. Time slid back into motion, the sounds of the woods returning to life, a distant rustle of leaves, soft birdsong. Jessica held Ethan tightly, her heart thrumming with gratitude. Never again, she whispered, feeling more whole than she had in what felt like ages. And as they looked around, she knew they had not only defeated darkness but forged a new beginning, a renewed sense of love that would carry them forward, no matter what lay ahead. With the shadows vanquished, the light would always be their guide, and together they would face the world, hand in hand, heart to heart. Wow! Thank you for following this intense and emotional journey. If you loved this conclusion, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let me know what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep this amazing community growing.